I've always been fascinated by games that don't care about the player. It's not concerned about whether you live or die because you're just a small speck in its giant history. No, I am not a masochist, thank you. So today I'll be going over some games that do exactly that. These games are all vastly different from one another, but they just came to mind because of how unique they are in comparison to the AAA slop we've gotten used to seeing. That damn woke culture ruining our manly video games, damn it. I hope you're all having a terrible day because I'm about to make it that much worse. So let us proceed. Little Nightmares 2 follows the story of a child named Mono as he journeys through a cruel and twisted world controlled by something we never quite learn about, something behind the scenes, pulling the strings, you know? The game explores such themes as dystopia, consumerism, childhood, and fear, hence the name Little Nightmares. By the way, the only reason that I chose Little Nightmares 2 over 1 is literally because I like it more, but both games kind of do the same thing thematically and gameplay wise.
We got it though, you have no business over here, sir. You have no business over here, sir. You have no business over.
The player is forced into a variety of different levels and are made to tackle things that humans are generally scared of. So there'll be a level where you wade through deep, swampy water or traverse through a forest full of bear traps. There's a level where you have to fight a bunch of spider-like hands. Kinda like those f***ers from Elden Ring. Objectively the worst common enemy from that entire game, by the way. And one thing about people's nightmares is that you tend to feel slow and powerless in them, and it's quite the same in this game. As you can imagine, Mono isn't a threat to someone like this. Mono isn't strong or athletic or even as big as the enemies he comes up against. So the only viable option you have 99% of the time is not to fight or flee, but to hide and wait for the danger to pass. This creates a ton of tension when you're hiding under a bed and this doughy, inhumane monstrosity is clinging to the ceiling above you, watching out for any sign of movement. This video by Totally Pointless TV basically compares the gameplay loop of Little Nightmares to a childish game of hide and seek, except if you're caught, you die. This should be the norm with real-life hide-and-seek in my opinion. Loser gets executed. I hope they add that into the patch notes of hide-and-seek 2. But definitely check out this video if you're interested in Little Nightmares. It's a really good watch. Little Nightmares doesn't have conventional combat really, because you're playing as a teeny tiny child in an adult's world. Every boss you encounter is abnormally large, grotesque, and downright disgusting. You have no chance of beating them if you take them head on. You either escape with your life, or you try to outwit them. Hey, you know what they say. If you can't beat them, blast them with a double-barrel shotgun. Being as small as you are in this world, every minor inconvenience is a major obstacle to you, like reaching a door handle to be able to progress into the next room, or having to use a stool to get on top of a counter or something. You have to forget everything you know about traversal because you're 5'9" now, and those guys have it tough. I also love the art direction that Tarsier took. Buildings twist and turn, locations distort depending on how you look at them, and it just creates that foreboding dynamic between Mono and his surroundings. The city that this game is set in feels like its own living organism trying to trap the player. It shows how you ain't shit here. There's just something so cold and eerie about this universe where anything can be a threat, whether that be friend or foe. There's one more thing I'd like to comment on about how this game disempowers you. In this world, you really do feel like an abandoned, lonely child. You find a companion that you spend the majority of the game with, but sometimes you end up splitting up with them, and those moments of solitude hit really hard. In those periods of isolation, you start to hear your footsteps a lot more, and obstacles in your path seem a lot bigger. That's how it was in my mind anyway. You end up taking your companion for granted, and so when they're no longer longer there, you really start to miss them. I love Little Nightmares 2 so much. I highly suggest you check it out if you're into these weird, dark, fairy tale themes. Kenshi is a very unique life simulator set in a sci-fi apocalyptic world. I think it's called Australia. You create a character and spawn in a small settlement with no directions or objective. The world is really your oyster here, except that oyster wants to take you out back and shoot you.
Imagine a world where rain can melt your soft, milky skin, where getting dismembered is considered an upgrade. A world of starving peasants, brutal samurai slave lords,
misogynistic paladin zealots, ancient murder bots, crazy men, cannibal hive men, cannibal fishman.
It is a gigantic and ruthless sandbox that you're just thrown into, and the game tells you to wake up, get out there, and try not to get killed by a starving bandit. Kenshi has a ton of possibilities though. You can become a mercenary and form a clan, or even settle down and create your very own village or town. Or how about becoming a wandering trader and traveling from city to city selling your wares. However, to reach your goal, you'll have to get past all the obstacles that this world will throw at you, because in Kenshi, you are a worthless nobody with no notable skills or talents and not a coin to your name. Quite like you in real life. So you grind to level up your skills and become a better human being. Or maybe you're not a human being, I shouldn't assume. Want to get stronger and more resistant? Get beat up a bunch of times. I'm not joking. Want to level up your athletics? Purposefully get over encumbered and run around. It's crazy, I know. Encumbrance is normally a mechanic that games encourage you not to have, but it's all very different in Kenshi. It encourages you to fail because you can learn from your mistakes and grow. Also, don't judge Kenshi for its visuals. I think a lot of us are way past caring about how ultra realistic 4K HD a game looks, as long as it's enjoyable and does something unique. Dynamic horse testicles are just a bonus. Kenshi is most certainly unique, and I think the color palette and rough textures really lend themselves well to the grittiness of its wastelandic world. Is that a word? It is now. Unfortunately, I didn't record this moment when it happened, but I do have an anecdote to tell you guys. Let me set the scene. So this was my first session of Kenshi ever. I created my character, I got spawned in a ruined city or settlement, so I thought I'll try to find my fortune elsewhere. And so I traveled out into the wastelands of Kenshi. I was traveling by my lonesome, and luckily I didn't come across any enemies during my journey to the nearest city. That is, until I was right at the gates of said city. I was so close, maybe 100 meters away from safety, when I got ambushed by a clan of cannibals or tribespeople of some sort. As you can imagine, I didn't stand a chance against their group of 10 to 15 warriors, and so I was left for dead. All my limbs had been cut off, and I was just chilling there, so close yet so far away from civilization. And yet, there's a light at the end of this tunnel, and it isn't the afterlife. A wanderer happened to be traveling through the area when they spotted my limbless body, and get this right, they came up to my body, observed me, and then patched me back up, allowing me to live another day. What the AI in Kenshi is programmed to do sometimes can be really neat, and that moment was just so dynamic and cool. It was completely unscripted, but in my head and my imagination, I had created a story. This interaction really demonstrated how weak and defenseless I really was in this Mad Max type world. I wasn't the hero of the story. The only reason I could continue living was because I was lucky enough to be encountered by a good Samaritan. The third and final game I want to talk a little bit about is Dark Souls 1. This is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because you're not my dad. Dark Souls and other modern FromSoft titles have generally been known for their difficulty. I mean, this game has a prepare to die edition for Pete's sake. Who the f*** is Pete? The big bad Souls bosses are of course one thing that makes the player feel weak, because these aren't just obstacles in your way. These are challenges for you to overcome, and that may take you hours, days, or even weeks to beat one tough cookie of a boss. God bless those brave hollowed that take months or years on one boss fight. They must have bought the Prepare to Die edition. Now, forgive me, for I have yet to beat Dark Souls, but I would like to give some examples of unique bosses that do different things that put the player down. The Capra Demon fight is infamous for being one of the most annoying due to the size of the boss arena, as well as having 2 common dogs also be chasing you around. And the problem with these guys is that they can stagger you if they bite you. So not only are you having to fight this tough son of a bitch, but you're also having to clear out his pets before they get you frozen into an undesirable position. The Bell Gargoyles are another early game fight that sucked to do the first time I played Dark Souls. The game basically makes you fight this guy who's pretty damn easy by himself, but notice how I said by himself. Yeah, but that's right, you have to fight 2 of them at the same time, baby. After you get the first one down to half health, the second one appears, and this guy kinda offers backup to the first guy. He can breathe fire, which staggers you if you get hit with it, so you're having to avoid these flames while the first guy is still chasing after you and swinging. Yep, real fun game. Thanks. On top of having a bunch of difficult bosses for the player to take on, Dark Souls' world and exploration is very different to many conventional games. Usually games might have collectibles or puzzles for the player to encounter. Dark Souls instead fills its world with a shit ton of enemies. Sure, you might occasionally stumble upon a new weapon or a merchant, but the selling point of this game is the combat. And any of these common scoundrels have a chance to catch the player off guard and kill them, even if they are rocking the best equipment in the game, because when you start your Dark Souls journey, you are not born the hero of the story. You are a hollowed, and there's many just like you that have attempted the rekindling of the first flame. You have to earn the right of being the protagonist of this game through skill and dedication. You have to be open to learning this world and its enemies, and that's what really makes this game so special to me. So to summarize this video, how do developers make players feel weak in their creations? Well, for one, size difference is a huge factor. Both Dark Souls and Little Nightmares have their bosses be enormous compared to the player, which immediately puts you at a disadvantage, unless you're Kratos. Kenshi uses size differently. Its world is so enormous that it makes the player feel like an ant, especially with the camera usually being so distant from the player character. Also, in all 3 games we discussed today, they don't let the player catch a break. They just keep throwing enemies and monstrosities at you constantly, so you're never allowed to catch your breath. I dread to think what Dark Souls 2 is like. If you don't give the player any time to relax, the game is going to maintain its tension, hence making the player feel like they're never really safe. And that's pretty much it, folks. I love games like the ones I mentioned in this video, the ones that go against people's expectations and aren't made to please the player, but rather immerse them in these hardcore worlds. Thank you for 1,000 subscribers. This channel has gone from being something I uploaded lazy let's play videos to now a full-blown passion project of mine. You are all my babies, and I kiss you on the forehead. Mwah. And if you're not subscribed yet, do it now if you also want a kiss. It's a limited time offer. Also, check out mine and Ghost's newly released podcast. If I had to summarize it, I would say that it's basically an hour-long shit post in audio format. Would you rather have a child made of pee or a pee made of child?
What am I supposed to say to this?
So check that out if you like what you hear. That's all. See ya.